Hello, everyone. Today is 7th of June, 2022, I guess. And this is the release engineer meeting. And I'm your host for today, and I hope I can remember all the steps and everything. Otherwise, Adolfo can gonna help me as well. And welcome everybody. And I'm gonna post in the chat the link for the meeting agenda. Add your name there. And remember that this meeting is being recorded and it's under of the Kubernetes code of conduct. And to resume the code of conduct is just to be nice to each other. I'm going to also share my screen. Where is it? This one. I hope everybody can see. Do I need to zoom in? Oh, that's fine. Okay. Oh, thanks, Joseph, for being the note taker. If there is anyone that's new to this meeting and wants to introduce yourself, please take the stage and have a speak.
Hello, this is Mijo here. I'm from India. I'm from Cochin, the southern part of India. I'm very new to Kubernetes SIG meeting and SIG engineering, so trying to explore more on these things. And happy to see all people.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Is anyone that wants to introduce yourself? Maybe Steven.
Yeah, hi. I'm Pandya Raja here. I'm also from India. So I used to contribute before for Kubernetes and the CNC of conformance tool. So I want to join this release engineering team. So I'd like to learn something. So we are maintaining the release. So I like to join here. Yeah.
Okay, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, hi there. This is my first meeting. I'm Mohammed. Yeah, I met some of you at KubeCon earlier last month, but yeah, I've already started doing some work, and one of the things I've been working on is on the agenda, so we'll talk about it later.
Okay, cool. Welcome. Okay, let's move to the release manager updates. Do you have anything, Adolfo? Otherwise, I can give some quick ones.
Well, regarding the release manager for 125, there's still not a release branch manager for 125. We are still in discussions to see who has the time and availability to take on the job. And we are also trying to figure out how the actual team will look like. So we are hoping we can bring some of the new people that have expressed becoming release manager associates, and maybe have some of them shadow the 125 branch manager, but we are still confirming the team.
Okay, thanks, Adolfo. Okay, I'm gonna give you one quick update. Like the past few days, some jobs, like for example, the CI build that builds and push the virtual markers was failing, and that was due for like an issue regarding the signatures that we are using. Since we are using ephemeral keys, the SIG store function was deployed a new version in production, and that had a breaking change for versions below, cosigned versions below 1.8.0 will not gonna work, and that was our case. The K promo and the CI job, like the CREL one CI build, was using cosign 1.7.2 dependency, and that broke our jobs. Then well, the mitigation was like we just need to bump everything to above 1.8.0 and then roll out everything. Now we roll out also a new version of the K-Promo this morning. All the jobs are green back, and the CI build also is green, and the CI, the virtual markers, is being up to date as well.
So one, awesome to hear. Thank you for working on all of the updates. I saw some of the PRs flying around. I guess the question I have is around compatibility expectations. It is not great that you know that one of the things that we depend on had a version incompatible change, which caused all of our stuff to break. So how can we work on preventing that in the future?
For prevention for the future is like I would say was more like an issue on our side, maybe. With like maybe we need to follow the full show and record and all the SIG-star releases and watch for the breaking changes, and also like up to date, like having everything up to date as soon as possible. That's the main stuff. I also work on the SIG-star, and I didn't see like for the upcoming full show and record releases, there's no breaking changes that's gonna affect us. But for the future, we need to keep our eye on the full show releases as well.
So I think because we have some overlap in folks who are contributors to both, like yourself, I would push back on that statement a little bit and say that for a V1 and change, if we are, or if there is an expectation of, and I know that is an open question, if there's an expectation of SEMVer compliant versions, then I would not expect the breaking change. And if that did happen, then I would ask, one, is what we're depending on adhering to SEMVer? If not, is there a reason why not? So on and so forth, right? Having that discussion is worthwhile. I think if it is a dependency where the expectation is that there will be SEMVer compliance, then we should have that conversation between teams.
Okay, I agree.
I can add a little bit more to that. So there are two factors here. The first one is we built a library to sign all of our artifacts, and that library is built at a point that is really close to the CLI in cosign. The breaking of cosign into independent libraries has not been going as fast as anyone would have liked. There are some plans to start working on moving some of the functionality inside of the cosign binary, its own libraries and repo, and ship some of that functionality to the SIG-star repo, and we should in the end up using that. That's the first one. So we built our library precisely to shield ourselves from some of the changes in the code that have been happening so fast, but this was more of a change in the APIs, right, Carlos? I think. And that's the first one. And the second one is so SIG-star has not yet reached GA, and since it has not, it's not officially generally available, so we can still expect some breaking changes to happen. And the expectation is that SIG-star will become GA around, I think, 1 month or so. And after that, so I've seen some of the work involved in that, and while people are trying to avoid breaking changes like this, we still are open to suffering some breaking change from now and then, but after it's GA, we should not see that anymore.
Yeah, I would comment that the full show and record is not on GA yet. It's like eventually some breaking changes is expected.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that the like I get it. Like I want to say it for the recording that I get it. At the same time, it's at V1 plus. So again, going back to the expectations of that, but again, I get it. So just as long as we are, I guess, keeping a steady eye on the GA, and if it's only going to be within a month, then I'm less concerned. But yeah, it is something that we should keep a steady eye on.
Yeah, now just to reinforce here, like we are running all the dependencies is like up to date for everything. Like, and this morning we also release the release SDK that have the code that we use in the K-promo and then also in the release repository as well. And those are like up to date.
So yes, I mean, keeping them up to date is fine. The problem, and I mean, we have mechanisms like Dependabot's running on most of our repos as well. The problem is with Dependabot, if it's doing an automatic bump or something like that, you can be like, okay, well, yes, I like this, squash and merge. I don't like this, ignore this minor version, ignore this major version, right? If we're pulling in, what are effectively major version changes in the minor versions, we don't have the mechanism to be able to say that when reviewing PRs. Like getting the libraries up to date is not so much a problem. It's the expectation that you have when you keep those libraries up to date. Right now, we don't have an expectation of compatibility, right?
Okay, yeah.
There's a question in the chat, Carlos. I don't know if you can provide more context to answer Matthias' question.
Yeah, I was just curious. It was mentioned that it was failing a lot of CI builds, and I'm not sure, is signing everything like on all CI builds, or should it only, for example, fail when it's failing on releases instead of failing all the CI jobs?
So yeah, it's a.
Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah. So to explain the part that I understood, because I didn't dive into the debugging too much on the cosign side, but to explain the part that I understand is so we have a suite of build jobs, right? For Kubernetes, right? So those are build jobs that are running across each of the supported release branches. So dev or the master branch, as well as everything that within the 3 or 4 SKU that we support, right? So each of those branches build roughly every few hours. There is a build. So for the development branch, there is both a full build and a fast build, which the fast build only produces AMD 64 artifacts, right? The artifacts that come out of these jobs include the fun tarballs and bits, container images, and the version markers, right? So the version markers are only written when we have proven that we are able to get all of the previous artifacts, right? The version marker basically rolls forward to say, hey, this last build was successful, right? If the build jobs are running against the same commit, it will recognize that the build has happened already and exit the build early, right? So what happens when so this is happening in the signing or signing verifying portion of the container image build. What's happening there is that we don't get a clean build, so we never roll the version marker forward. So if there are changes that are expected in newer versions of mainline, right? Those changes aren't reflected, or rather the artifacts don't exist. The version marker doesn't exist, the artifacts don't exist from that version marker, from that SHA that's at the head of the master branch, which means any job that depends on the version markers to derive that information, or any jobs that may depend on the version marker to derive that information, or the content on the mainline to be ahead of whatever the latest build was, will not work. So there's a side effect for anything that depends on the version markers to pull the head of the development branch.
Yep.
That's a lot to grok, but I'll reread it and listen to it again to fully understand what. I understand the version markers, but I've not fully understand myself yet how that is used in different parts. But that's just because I'm new to the project. But I'll catch up.
Let me. We have rewritten an explainer for this, actually. So I would take a read of this and see if that tracks. And if it doesn't, let us know. We'll clean that up. But essentially, any job can depend on these version markers across anything that's running in Kubernetes or elsewhere, right? So those jobs will often have within the first few steps, they'll have a fetch, right? And the fetch will curl or some sort of deriving of the version marker and version, and attempt to use that to either pull a container image or pull down some code content or something like that, and then start its own job, right? So what you'll see when the version markers start failing, if the content that hey, you did a bug fix for this area, and now you want to test it against your area specific thing that may or may not be in core Kubernetes, it's going to fail at the fetch. Right. Or it will not fail at the fetch. It'll pass at the fetch because it's pulling an old version of the build, and the change that you expected to see is not there. So your tests will continue to fail.
Is that also one of the, I saw a ticket recently that specifically said that the markers were not updated, although there were already changes?
Right, the markers were not updated because the sign verify portion is, so going back to the explanation earlier, the sign verify portion is so the markers don't get we do not up, the version marker update is roughly the last step in the build process, and we will not update them until we've proven that the artifacts actually exist.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll read the document.
Thanks, Steven. Any other questions, or we can move on? Okay, let's go to the open discussions. Leo, about the test grid JSON exporter.
Yeah, hello. So you might have seen, I think a couple of weeks ago, a new repository merged under Kubernetes 6, so the test grid JSON exporter. This is right now a tool in development, so it's not deployed anywhere. There's also a pull request updating the README, but it's kind of still in progress to clarify about the goals and so on. But essentially, this will be used, or it should be used for the release team, but maybe also for release engineering, to get basically a one-page overview about the relevant test grid boards, so that we have a Grafana dashboard that shows just a summary, and which we can use for reporting and stuff like that. And you can see, if you open up the issues, I created I think 5 issues. Some of them are just to align with Kubernetes in general. So for example, use like the community-owned infrastructure to host the container images and stuff like that. But also, for example, the Grafana dashboard And yeah, I just want to, I don't know, share the 5 issues. If you have like any input, would be awesome to leave any comments. I think I will be working with it with Robert, and maybe also Hossein on this. Yeah, and I think one of the tasks maybe, or one of the interesting like topics would be to define use cases, when to use this tool and when to use, for example, CP maybe, which we use right now as a pilot project, and when to use just a regular dashboard, because I think just introducing tools is also not the best. But yeah, maybe this is something that we could think about. Yeah.
Okay, looks cool. Thanks, Leo.
Hey, Leo, have you talked to the CI Signal team, the 125 team, and shown this yet?
So this not exactly, because it's not running anywhere, so you cannot use it. I think I sent Ash, who's right now the lead for CI Signal. I sent him basically a summary of things that is currently work in progress, and this was a part of it. Yeah, I can drop a link and make this a bit more, like, I don't know, highlight it in the chat. I think it's a good idea.
So yeah, a general note for, again, this might be a SIG release meeting type note versus the release engineering meeting, but a general note is that if we have agreed to ingest the project via donation, I feel that that is also signaling our intent to utilize the project. And with that said, for the areas that the project affects, we should be reaching out to them directly and kind of encouraging the usage. Otherwise, one, it's good because we've signaled intent to use the thing. 2, it gives an opportunity to one, kind of strengthen the bond between the folks who are donating the tool, and maybe, in certain examples, and somewhat in this example, rolling off of the release team to are rolling into a new role in the release team to kind of make sure that there's a handoff between these two things. And then, and then finally, it gives an opportunity to kind of build up that contributor, or that set of contributors portfolio of contributions, right? So I say all of that to say that, yes, let's continue having the chat with CI Signal and encourage them to use it, and encourage them to contribute and maintain it.
Yeah, sounds good. So there's also a project board which we created last release to manage some of the efforts for CI Signal, and I have not done it yet, but I can update the project board to also list the 5 new issues, and then drop a link in the chat.
Cool.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, move on. Next one, it's CC confirm about the 125 sprint manager. Don't know. Adolfo, do you know anything about this?
I think Adolfo just gave the update earlier that the branch matter is still pending.
Okay, then this is part of. Let's copy from here. Oh. Thanks, Joseph. Next one, can I get some help in getting over the line? Hamed, can you explain this one?
Yeah, so that's a fix for getting own aliases automatically synced across repositories by pulling the aliases from Peribolus. It's a little bit different to how we create the own aliases today. So it requires some changes. One of them being that instead of people crafting aliases manually, they're going to correspond to GitHub theme exists. So yeah, if you scroll down a little bit in that PR, there's a nice README that explains what's going on.
So I remember this conversation kind of like floating by my inbox. There are comments that need to be resolved, and I think the the primary ones are that you should. So if you think about the whoever is thank you. So if you think about the usage of like the README generator, the SIGs generator, the groups generator for
Okay.
K community, for example, right? In that template is also there's a begin and end custom content section in that template, so that there is a portion of the template that can be generated, and there's a portion of the template that you can do manually, right?
Okay.
And for SIGs where it doesn't fit, where the template doesn't fit what they do perfectly, we are actually one of them, where we may include custom content because like the release team works a little differently than any of the other structures in Kubernetes. The same could be said for this. I think to summarize some of the comments, it was, we don't want to auto generate aliases. There are situations where, and I say we as in the Kubernetes community en masse does not want to auto generate aliases, because different strokes for different folks kind of thing, right? The aliases are going to look different depending on what repos you go to. To give you an example, for release engineering, we may give release manager associates a certain level of access on specific repos, but we may not give them approval access on other repos because they're potentially, so like test infra, for example. Test infra includes files that are potentially destructive. They're the signing, verifying, build, push kind of things for production that we may not want to give people approval rights to, right? So in that situation, with similarly named aliases, you kind of get you fall into a state that you don't actually want, right? So you should provide people the option to generate their aliases, but not enforce it. I can say for SIG release in particular, there are places where I would love for the aliases to stay up to date all the time. And it's one of those things that, like, if you look at the if you don't mind, Carlos, if you can open up the SIG release repo. And I'll try to walk through this like super quick, right? So, and Leo, if you don't mind dropping the Signal CI Signal project board in the meeting notes. If you go to the issue templates in GitHub. Yeah. So if you go to like release manager onboarding, this will give you an example.
Oh, I saw that issue earlier. There's a big long one, and then there's a bit about adding people to write GitHub places and stuff.
Right. So this is a really good example of, like, we have at least 5 places that you have to add a release manager to and update aliases and yada, 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 where it would be good to like say, hey, they're onboarding, cool, run this tool, and that will sync the team, right? Or that'll issue the PRs to sync the team kind of thing, right? That being able to have that would be great. To keep the teams up to date over time, especially if people are onboarding, offboarding, and there are different people handling the case each time. But there are several places in the community where you don't want the auto generation. So TLDR, allow the option, but don't enforce it. And that will help push this over the line.
Okay. So yeah, so auto-generating alias owners is not even in scope, because I don't think that should be automatically made. Humans should be making that change. With own aliases, I think the GitHub teams should be available in every repo with space at the end for people to add whatever custom content they want.
Okay, let's
That
see.
the way forward, I think I should pull this.
just tracking the breadcrumbs. Yeah, I think there's a scope that, yeah, I mean, Bob brings up the question of scope, where
Yeah, initially repositories will have to be manually onboarded for auto generation. So start small. Let's see how useful it is. If it turns out to be a success, it's worthwhile going through the hassle of making sure things are in GitHub Teams.
yeah, and I mean, for us, we're like reasonably good about our GitHub teams. They're pretty well segmented.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily reference all of them for reviews and things, but the teams are pretty well segmented. So this is something that so just in terms of scope and why Bob left some of those comments, this is the need, because we have kind of these disparate repos across multiple orgs, is definitely there for SIG release. The suggestion that it might do enforcement or should do enforcement or synchronization in some way, shape, or form is under the purview of the GitHub management subproject within SIG contributor experience.
Okay.
So that's kind of why he was highlighting it. So I will say for SIG release, I definitely want this, but I can't speak for the entire community.
Well, the only catch is that the own aliases have to be generated in the K-org and they gotta live there, and then somebody can consume them from anywhere.
Why do they have to live there?
Because the information that you need lives there. So
that is not strictly true.
okay.
So are you saying that the tool has to live there, or what content specifically are you referring to?
Yeah, so the tools live there and they read the config folder. So let's say somebody turned up today, right? What would happen is you'd add them to the relevant subfolder in under config in K-org. And
So
then
just to clarify, the tool does not need to live in K-org.
Okay.
Where you're using K-org as the source of truth, which makes sense because that's where all the teams are. Right.
Yeah.
So the tool doesn't need to live there.
Okay.
And that's like, that will also help you push it across the line.
Okay.
So I'm looking at some of these things. There's bash that could probably be Go as a comment. Yeah, so I would say don't do the generation. So like what we tend to do is, like SIG. So for example, like the SIG release owner's alias or the the K SIG release or the K release aliases are roughly the source of truth for the rest of the SIG release repos, right?
Okay.
You can try using SIG release as the source of truth for your tests and do the generation there. I'm fine to have the generation happen on the SIG release level. You're getting some pushback because the PR also includes generation for everything within Kubernetes.
Okay.
So yeah, if you can descope to just SIG release, then we can. I'm happy to have like hobby, or like it's kind of like the pre-flight it here, and firm it up.
Okay. Interesting thoughts. I'll go and take another look.
Cool.
Cool. Thanks. Moving on, starting the road for salsa level 3. That's Dolfo. You.
Yeah, just one really quick. So in the SALSA compliance cap, well, I'll link it in a little bit. We have targeted complying with SALSA level 2 by the time we release Kubernetes 124. And we didn't get all the way there, but we did most of the work that we required to get things ready to do it. For those of you who are not familiar with the effort, SALSA is like a security framework to ensure we are releasing things in a more secure manner. And it specifies certain security levels, which we have tried to tie to certain Kubernetes releases. So 123, we did SALSA level 1. We targeted SALSA level 2 for 124. And for 125, we are targeting to reach SALSA level 3. So if we had to split some of the work we had to do, it was not all just technical work. Alongside the technical and programming tasks we had to do, to reach SALSA level 1, we had to do a lot of consensus building and working with the community and writing the KEPs and all of that work alongside the producing the necessary attestations. On the next one, for 124, the non-programming work was mostly around setting up and spinning up the necessary infrastructure to be able to sign and generate the required tokens for the identities we needed to use for signing. And that leaves the road to SALSA 3 for 125. I think we can make it. There are still some challenges which we need to address, but I think we can achieve a good level of moving the release process towards SALSA 3. So just my message was that I'm going to start updating both the KEPs and the SALSA compliance spreadsheet, which we use to track the levels. And I'll start posting the issues for the required work, and also calling for people who are interested in these efforts on the release engineering channels. So if you want to join the journey, please come, and be happy to point you to some work if you want to help.
Thanks, Adolfo. Any questions regarding this topic?
I have. Yes, I think that we should encourage the contributions here. I think that this kind of dovetails too with figuring out our stance on inclusion for release manager associates. I think some of the I don't want this to be taken as gatekeepy or anything, or hopefully it doesn't come off that way. But I think that some of the best people positioned to do this work are release managers, because they have context of so many parts of the system that these pieces need to be integrated into. So I think that as part of this work, we need to better define as a team the process for inclusion to release manager associates, as well as moving through that contribution ladder, and as well as offboarding and like what inactivity looks like and what offboarding should look like as a result.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And especially some parts require access in order merely to test them. So that is one. But we also have other things that do not require that access. So I'm planning to split the work into as smaller pieces as I can, so that anybody interested can join.
Awesome.
Okay.
And I will again stress the need to kind of build out this team. I think that you know, a lot of the folks who have the requisite access also are wearing, you know, Adolfo is a great example. Adolfo, Carl, really like anyone who is simultaneously a release manager and a SIG lead. That's not good. Because it means we're also staring at other things, right? So again, stressing the need to kind of build this ladder out and onboard new contributors to the release manager associates thing. I mean, you know, we have the reason for the release manager associates program is to provide the a level of access into logs and the team as folks build confidence in learning processes and tooling before they're granted access to basically delete prod. So not everyone has access to delete prod per se right now, but the senior release managers do. So I think the name of the game is trust, right? People who are onboarding into this team and moving up through the largest Go project on the internet, right? And there is a level of expectation. So we need to scale out the team, because I mean, I think in general, just in open source life and in just state of the world, people are tired. People are doing too much, but we also have to make sure we're scaling out the team carefully. So that should 100% be one of our primary focuses for 125.
I have to say that as a humble only release manager that doesn't have another role, I have felt the burn of that, you know, of like the other release managers having other more, I would call them senior roles where their hands are full. So like for the past 2 release cycles where they have been focusing a lot on the SALSA compliance thing, which is amazing. Like the monkey jobs, let's call them like that. I have been feeling the burn, and it's great, but we definitely need more people.
Yeah, I agree.
And the time zones, and yeah.
Okay, do we have any other open discussions, like last minute? Steven? Okay.
I would. So I wonder if I could propose a job for which would be to help with recruiting and help with the ladder.
I mean, I would do it, but I should say this off the recording. So let's discuss it later.
Fair enough.
No, I think it's kosher. I think that is usually like a role for like women, you know, and I would be happy, but I think the stereotype would be self-fulfilling.
So allow me to rephrase. As an experienced release manager, you know.
No. I really don't mind, and you know that I
Yeah.
would bring people, but I also think like if more people or more women come, and I'm saying this not just from my perspective, but because there have been many conversations around this with other women in the larger release family, that that the more responsibilities are for other people, and we end up doing the things that we don't, that other people don't want to do. So that's just it. But other than that, I'm happy, and I am extroverted enough to just be like, hey, people, come. But that also has to be
So-
sustainable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I also still have to code
so
releases and all of that. So it
So
will be
sorry. So recruiting was maybe the like I hear the feedback, and if that is something that is happen, and you provide feedback really openly. So like if there are things that you're seeing that are not patterns that we want to be representative of SIG release, please continue to bring them to the SIG leads. The recruiting is maybe the wrong word.
no, that's great. That's great.
Baking, I think baking sustainability into more of the process, right? If we
Yeah.
can't, I mean, you know, one great example, and I am maybe not excited about using this example because it reinforces the reinforces one of the problems, is that the documentation for release management. For example, there have been open issues on the documentation for release management for a while. And that's the kind of thing that, so like, I find personally, if I'm going to go use a repo, understand a process, the first thing I'm going to look for is documentation. If there are two repos that do, you know, it's some cool tool and they do roughly the same thing, and they've got like roughly the same star count, forks, whatever kind of artificial metric you want to look at, and one has better documentation, I'm going to choose that one. So I think one of the problems that we have is when there is a lack of visibility into the process for eligibility in the first place, and then two, wading through documents that are kind of labyrinthian and maybe not as up to date as they could be is another problem. So I think helping with sustainability and recruiting is the part of it is improving our documentation, and that's it will continue to be a problem. I think we have shored it up
It's
in
okay,
multiple places. Yeah, I think we've shored it up in multiple places, like, you know, the promotion tooling, for example, the contribution docs. I did a sweep of and updated some documentation in SIG release recently, but I think the day-to-day playbook for release engineering is lacking. So what ends up happening is the folks who already have context on how to do the job, instead of explaining it while the house is on fire, there's a CV to attend to, there's a build job that's broken, we just do the thing and we reinforce the sustainability problem.
Yeah, totally. No, that is what I meant with when I said that I felt the burn, because it's like I have been doing the operational things, and that's great. I have no complaint about that. But then the things that need to be fixed, like usually, yeah, we're understaffed. That's the reality, because no one is not doing anything. You know, like people who are doing all the salsa compliance thing are up to their tonsils with work. So we have been relegating other monkey work because we don't have the time. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I would also say that, like, I would almost prefer a release to be late at this point, a release to be late, something to fall on the floor to say, this is something we have to sit down and do. It's that important, because like when we run into these things, it's just like, hey, did someone update the base images? Okay, someone updated the base images and they pushed one PR, but they didn't promote the, you know, they didn't promote the images after they were built, and then you have to come back and update the images again so that the set of dependents get updated. And then did you promote those? And then after you promoted all of that stuff, okay, that's great, but then did you take those references and update them in Kubernetes? Is the, you know, like do people understand that flow? Right, and you usually don't unless you have the context of being in the team. So I see that Jason in the chat has has offered to be a volunteer to help you out, Veronica. So folks who are interested, we'll also mention this on the, well, one, it's on the recording, two, it's in the notes. We'll mention it on the mailing list too, but overall we need to spend some time on sustainability. And it's so important that, like, one, this is being discussed on a larger Kubernetes community level, but also on the CNCF and governing board level about sustainability of projects. This is so important that I would prefer to slip deadlines to get it done. Then, like, that's how important it is. So we need to work out a plan for 125 that is not just strictly operational, but also has to, well, strictly tactical rather, and has more to do with the strategy and sustainability of the SIG as well.
I don't want to cut the discussion, but we are running out of the time. Adolfo, maybe.
Yeah, well, just my quick 2 cents on this. So I agree and acknowledge the need to update the processes and everything, but I think that we should find another process, because I mean, while release managers can actually provide the necessary background and information and knowledge to be plastered and transformed into process and definitions of them, we have like very few people right now that can actually perform. So Veronica, for example, is like, I don't want to volunteer her just yet, but she may end up being one of the persons that may be a candidate for branch managing 125. So I would rather explore another process where we as a release managers group can advise some other contributors to move this along. But it's a longer conversation, and maybe for the next one.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
for it, Veronica.
Oh, okay. That I was just going to say that I have volunteered to be branch manager for 125 in private, but I didn't want to break anyone's rules or wishes. But like, yeah, I that lives in the back of my mind now. That's why I have been very insisting on asking if anyone else wanted to. But yeah, happy to take it.
I mean, we also have this unfortunate, and I know I'm rambling and we're running out of time. We also have this unfortunate disease, I guess, in open source, where we're very willing to help at our own detriment sometimes. So I want to be cognizant of that. I'm also looking at the roster. We have 4 release managers. We have 4 release managers currently who are also SIG leads. We have one that is, I believe, away for school right now. Veronica, who has been doing it a bunch, Nabrun, who has done it previously as well. It might be the Veronica Nabrun tag team again, as we work to onboard release manager associates. I think that we should. I don't want to say like throw the playbook out of the window, because theoretically there isn't one that exists. But the need to, I think we don't have a defined process around how we recruit and onboard release manager associates, and we need to. So far it has been, have you served on the release team as in some lead capacity, in some role lead capacity, right? So if you have hit role lead on any one of our release teams, within reason, within the supported bounds, then you are eligible to be a release manager if that is something that you're interested in. We don't, I think there was a time where we were just getting people up to the level of release, of release manager. So we built out a team of people who have full access, and then unfortunately deprioritized the kind of the contribution ladder portion of it for the release manager associates. So I think for the release manager associates, we've seen that there has been interest and sometimes availability, and some work has been done, and some people shoot through the ranks based on the work. Some people do not necessarily have the time to dedicate to it without being actively mentored. So we need to figure out how to bridge that. And I think maybe it starts with bringing in a group and discussing it.
I agree. Okay, I'm gonna block all the conversations. We run out of the time, and you can blame me on the Slack later. Thanks, everyone, and have a nice day and evening.
Take it easy, everyone.